Well, good morning, everyone. We can go ahead and start the meeting. This is for the September agenda review, and I will turn it over to Amy for comments.
Good morning. Just a real quick update, recap of last week. We had our first round of community input related to the development of the county's first Unified Development Ordinance. Thank you for those who were able to participate. We had 3 sessions for elected and appointed officials. One was our regular county commission meeting. One was a workshop with some of you all, and then we had a workshop with with county commission later in the week. We had 3 committee meetings that were made up of our technical committee and our community advisory committee. We also met with the chamber and some representatives from their association. We had 5 public input sessions, and those consisted of 4 in-house open houses. We had approximately 165 attendees at those, and we had 1 virtual session that had about 40 attendees participate. So all the materials from last week have been posted to our website, along with our audit report and the feedback. We're asking for additional feedback through the end of this week, so Sunday evening, we'll continue to accept comments specifically on the audit report and the materials that have been posted to our website. So everything on our website should reflect those public input sessions. So for those of you who weren't able to participate, we really encourage you all to jump on the website. There is a presentation on there that we gave for the virtual session if you want to see what we talked about in all the open houses. I encourage you to take a look. And again, want to reiterate, comments are welcome on an ongoing basis. It's not limited to just this week, but for right now, we're just focused on that audit report. Thank you.
Well, without further ado, we will jump into item number 28. Mike has that report.
Yes, thank you. So this is a concept plan with a development plan attached to it. It's the site predominantly in the planned commercial zone with the CA zoning closer to Asheville Highway, which is on the south side of this property. If you remember earlier this year, there was a master plan for this site for it's intended for a commercial recreation fields, as you can see on the plan, in a large parking lot, and then some other associated uses. So what this request is really just looking at the roads and land disturbance or grading for the site. So no uses are technically requested at this time. The new roads, so there's an existing road, A, which is being extended to a roundabout, road B that goes around the existing grocery store, which is located here. Road C is an extension of an existing road going to the east. Road D is this little access road connecting to Asheville Highway. So the other 2 elements, I guess this portion is a private driveway essentially on the plan, recommending that not be technically approved as part of this application. Really, it's more appropriate to be reviewed when the actual use is brought forward, like the parking lot, adjacent ball fields, that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that driveway being there. It's not access to lots that we're really considering as part of a concept plan. So it's really better to be approved as the next step. Same thing with a little access road down here on the southwestern part of the site. It's just an access driveway essentially, and not required for the lots that are being constructed. It can be used by lots being constructed and can be approved during a permitting process, but doesn't need to be approved as part of the concept plan. So that kind of hits the generalities of this. It's new roads and extension of public roads. They're asking for 3 variances. There's 16 lots. Most of them are outlots in southeast corner. There's a few kind of wrapped around this inner central part of the site, and there's another one here. And technically the large lot that remains is a lot as well. And then also the land disturbance we'll touch on. Regarding the variances, staff is recommending denial of one of the variances, which is to reduce the intersection radius from 75 feet to 25 feet. And basically the request was a blanket request for all intersection radii, And staff was not comfortable with approving all intersection radii down to that amount. You'll see the slide later on where they've provided a figure kind of as a new proposal, adjusting some of those radii. So I'll touch on that in a moment. Staff is okay with the other two variances that were vertical curve related. And just a couple of conditions I'm going to mainly talk about is about reducing grading and proposed remediation for disturbance in the hillside area on the east side of the site. So that's basically over on this side. And then maintain the tree line within 150 feet of the riverbank. So that'd be along here. Again, so this is at the intersection of Asheville Highway and Governor John Sevier Highway. I-140 is to the southwest. Again, so this is a closer look at the site. We'll kind of touch on disturbance again, and if you don't remember, the site has been heavily disturbed over the years. The main part of the site that has not been disturbed is over in the eastern portion of the property. So this parcel, these couple of parcels, were recently purchased by the applicant. And the back part of this lot was rezoned to planned commercial recently, as you can see here. So when I speak of the CA zoning on the property, it's this portion here, which is, remnant, has been there for quite a while. So as I mentioned, there was a master plan approved for the site, and really that was kind of just give them comfort level of what types of uses will be permissible, because the planned commercial zone doesn't actually list permitted uses per se, and also just kind of give a general idea. Okay, well, what you're showing generally makes sense, but we'll need to see more detailed plans going forward. And just as a note, what was originally proposed as an RV park may not be that going forward. Obviously, all these uses are up for change. There's nothing that's been technically approved yet, so there's nothing wrong with that as part of that previous approval. It might change to some residential use, but we'll see when something comes forward. It might be something completely different from either of those two uses. It could be something else as well. So, the two conditions I've noted on the right on this slide are from the master plan. So, condition number 2 said that submitting a development plan applications for the proposed developments in the PC zone before land disturbance of any portion of the previously undisturbed or building permits are issued. And again, I'll go over these in a little bit more detail. And then this condition number 3, that a rough grading permit may be issued based on the master plan approval predicated on an approved erosion and sediment control plan. The approximate conservation area must remain undisturbed other than underbrush, including the tree line that follows the bend of the river approximately 150 feet from the riverbank, unless a subsequent development plan application is approved by the Planning Commission that allows this disturbance. So this application does include a development plan application with it, so technically the Planning Commission can approve additional disturbance within that 150-foot buffer with this if they choose to do so. I think the intent there was that we would have a more concrete idea of what is actually being proposed at that time. But like I said, the Planning Commission can consider whether additional grading closer to the riverbank is appropriate at this time or not.
I've got a question about the grading side. Yeah, and I follow, and I do remember when it came through and you guys said you wanted to hold off on doing any major grading in that 150 feet along the river. And I think you talked about some of that inland, more in the center. So can you go over that again? I seem to remember that the applicant needed to be able to do some grading on a lot of the site to be able to get the other part ready. Does that not allow that to happen?
So basically what these two conditions say is that we knew that, so this area here was not part of the master planned area because they didn't own it yet, but it was going through rezoning the exact same month that we heard the development plan, so we knew that that was going to be brought into, assuming that county commission approved the planned commercial zoning. So this is the area that's undisturbed. There's a little bit of undisturbed area just north of it that was on the old planned commercial parcel, or the existing property at the time. Most of the property outside of that has been disturbed to some degree over the years, either through farming activities or just other disturbances. And you can, oops. And so this is an aerial from 1985. You can see that even like along the waterfront, like areas, there's a lot of disturbance. This area was already pretty much disturbed, but
I guess my question is, and this might be a question for the applicant on Thursday, but I would hesitate in these large sites, especially these large sites when they're trying to do, a lot of grading. They sometimes need some flexibility to be able to get to all of it instead of importing dirt.
By those two conditions, they could go get rough grading permits today without a new development plan approval from this body to disturb everything that's undisturbed in this area, already disturbed in this area, which is most of it. This entire area doesn't have trees on it up to the riverbank, so within 150 feet of the riverbank. So if, now I have a slide that kind of shows what I'm talking about here, but say this tree line's only 100 feet from the riverbank, they can grade up to that 100 foot and right. Not the 150 feet.
I just don't want to unnecessarily hamstring them, with these things. So
so that's majority of the site would still be available for grading regardless without a development plan approval the second.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is getting back to, what you were speaking to, what's available for disturbance and what the planning commission conditions or what recommendations I have. So this is just again pointing out that on the east side of the property is mainly where the undisturbed areas exist today. Their current proposal goes into the hillside. Point one here is about a 104-foot cut, and then two is about a 118-foot cut. And just to give you an idea, this graded slope is about 365 feet long, about 120 feet tall. That's really needed to get this road in. They would need to disturb this hillside. That's the gist of it. Even if they stop grading at the back of the curb, you're probably still looking about halfway up the slope, if not to like point one. So what we're recommending is that that this portion of the property remain undisturbed until they bring back either a plan with reduced grading or some kind of remediation for the graded hillside area. And that's basically what this says. The area that is highlighted on the screen would be, or on this parcel, the planned commercial portion would remain undisturbed. The applicant has provided this, and I'll add this to the packet, a reforestation detail that the engineer has used on other sites in Knox County. I don't have another detail that shows, or figure that shows exactly where the reforestation would happen, but my assumption is that it'd be mainly in that hillside area that I was describing. So if the Planning Commission wants to consider that this month, they can. They just have to amend or remove the condition that I was recommending, and I can explain that if needed, which one that is. So the condition number 3, again, this is going back to the 150-foot distance from the riverbank, trying to explain what's going on. So 150 feet is approximately to this location, and don't really worry about the 100 foot at this point. Again, so looking at their grading plan on the hillside ridgetop overlay, 150 feet is to about here. They're grading to about 65 feet to the riverbank in this general area. So the tree line would go, in this scenario. So as I mentioned, if there's area that has no trees in the 150 feet, that can be disturbed. So for instance, in this case, this area could be disturbed, no problem. And just to give you an idea again, so we're looking at, this is a fill area. Right now they're proposing about 30 feet of fill here, so you'd have a 2.5 to 1 slope coming down to the riverfront. Just a little bit north of this, where the cul-de-sac for the driveway is about 44 feet of fill.
So a quick clarification on that too, then. So, and I get there's the fill and they're running the toe of that slope out, and you're saying they're gonna have to get into the trees down closer to the river. But I guess earlier you were saying that you wanted to maintain the 150 feet until they turned in.
Yeah, that's my recommendation, that they
Right,
maintain
but
that.
I guess my question is that this is the plan for that area, right?
It's what they're showing as future.
This is, is this the parking
We can
lot?
presume that their intent is to do a parking lot in this location.
Right, and I'm just trying to understand, if the intent is for the parking lot, we already know that use, right? I mean, unless they're gonna swap it out and do a building there or something. Is that, am I following you on that?
Yeah, that's what their intent is what the master plan shows, or is what they're generally showing on this. But we just don't know what that final plan is yet and how it's going to work. I'm sure they generally know how it's going to work, but, you know, if the,
Okay.
anyway, it's just, we don't have the final plan.
It's fine,
So
we can
have
talk
to-
about it Thursday. I was just curious.
Mike, can we have this presentation shared with us?
I can share it with you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions before I move on? A couple real quick things. I mentioned earlier that applicant has proposed modifications to their variance request. So one of the primary concerns was vehicles entering the site, because this is a commercial. These are commercial outlots. They could be anything, you know, that you would see on any typical commercial corridor. The 25-foot radii could potentially be a concern with maintenance over the years. So these larger delivery trucks and such have to go around these curves that could be, running over the curb and breaking them up and such. So 50-foot, they're proposing 50-foot radiuses at anything that's blue, and 25-foot radiuses were shown in red. So I haven't had a chance to talk to engineering and see if they're comfortable with these modifications yet, but we'll get that to you. This will be part of the packet again. If you want to consider approval of the variances and engineering is comfortable with them, then you can move forward with that. We were just uncomfortable with the blanket 25-foot radiuses. So I'll be happy to run through some of the conditions. I know I don't want to belabor this too much. But I do want to point out condition number 11, which is about the environmental site analysis or assessment for this site, recommending that the phase 2 be completed. I need to discuss that more with engineering. That one may or may not be struck before the planning commission meeting on Thursday. But the applicant, to my knowledge, is moving forward with that phase 2, working with the state brownfield remediation program. So that this was really more about trying to make sure that gets done before dirt gets moved, if that's the most important, or if that's necessary. If not, if engineering feels comfortable with them moving forward with rough grading, then we can change that if needed. But and then condition number 12 is just more of a FYI or heads up for the applicant that things, until we get final development plans approved, things could change. So kind of moving ahead at your own risk with the rough grading. This isn't meant to mean that I anticipate anything of a change, but until those final development plans are approved, there could be a change. And these are just two conditions that we already talked about. So does anybody have any questions?
Very good. Thank you. If we move on to number 37, this is some city ordinance amendments. I know Commissioner Gill, we talked a little bit about possibly giving a little more time on some of these. And we're working on how that could look in the future, but just want to let you know we are looking into that. But in general, I like this one a lot. I'm sorry, Colin.
Oh, wait, this is,
There's somebody from the city, Barry. Would you like to comment on it? Mr. Barry?
Sure, thank you. Brian Berry, City of Knoxville Plans Review and Inspections Department. And at this point, what we want to do is we want to recommend changes to the RN5 residential zoning district to increase maximum building height, along with some other dimensional standards associated with this proposed increase. The reason why we want to do this is we want to allow for additional height on multifamily structures from the existing 35 feet to 45 feet and ultimately 55 feet, depending upon the parcel's location. This will allow density to develop more from a vertical standpoint where it's appropriate. So in order to kind of talk a little bit about this, I'll just real quickly go through, as many of you are fully aware, residential zoning starts, in RN1 and goes up to RN7. RN1 is typically your low density, single family scale, on up to RN7, which is high density residential development. So requirements in these districts, they vary, such as lot area, width, setbacks, building height, and permitted uses. These typically increase and allow for larger and denser development as you go up from RN1 to RN5. So to give an example, RN4 district, the purpose statement states that it's intended to accommodate single-family, two-family, townhouse dwelling development, along with low-rise multifamily dwellings. So low-rise multifamily dwellings in the RN4 have a max building height of 45 feet. The contrast here is in RN5, building height max is 35 feet for multifamily as well as any other kind of structure. And then it almost doubles when you jump up to RN6. It goes to 65 feet for multifamily. So what we're trying to do here and show in the table 4-2 is illustrate the dimensional standards in RN4, 5, and 6. We're trying to show in red what's being proposed in the RN5 district. So we believe that this provides for a more balance between the RN4 and RN6 district by increasing that height or allowing that height to be increased. So starting with maximum building height, you see for multifamily structures, it's to increase from 35 feet to 55 feet, unless it's adjacent to a single family residence, and then it would be dropped down to 45 feet. So this 55 feet, it falls in between RN4 and RN6, being RN4 at 45 feet and RN6 at 65 feet. So it also incorporates limiting multifamily building height similar to RN4 when it's adjacent to single-family dwellings. So it would be capped there at 45 feet instead of allowing it to go up to 55. Some other proposed changes as well into RN5 are regarding the front setback. So the front setback for multifamily structure stays at 25 feet or the average of block face for any kind of development that has a building height of 35 feet or less. So that's already established. We wouldn't do anything to that. But the proposed change is the front setback being extended to 35 feet for building height that is over 35 feet. And this is consistent with the front setback that's found in RN6, the district to the side of it. For interior setbacks, the minimum interior side setback for a building height 35 feet or less in RN5 would be increased from 10 feet to 12 feet. And this is consistent with what is established in the RN4 district. And then building heights in the RN5 that are over 35 feet in height, it would be 12 feet plus an additional 1 foot for every 2 feet of building height over 35 feet. So again, this would be consistent with what is established in the RN6 district already. So ultimately, it would end in a max of 22 feet of an interior side setback for a building that's 55 feet in height, which is what is consistent with what's established in RN6. So buildings in RN5, finally, over 35 feet in height that are adjacent to a single-family dwelling, the interior side setback is 12 feet plus 1 additional foot setback for every 1 foot of building height over 35 feet. This would also be a max of 22 feet for the interior side setback for buildings 45 feet in height when adjacent to single-family dwellings. So I know this is a lot to throw at you. Again, I've provided it all in a memo, typically trying to outline this as well as what's proposed in the actual table in the text. So take a look at that between now and Thursday, and if you have additional questions on this. So I think another question that would probably be applicable is how many parcels will this propose to change or impact in the city? There are 975 parcels throughout the city that are zoned RN5. And so when we're talking particularly about height with regards to multifamily, we have to consider two things. We have a minimum lot area of 6,450 square feet in order to do multifamily, and we have to have a lot width of 60 feet. And so out of those 975 parcels, a little more than half, 56%, would qualify and benefit from this increased height by being allowed to do multifamily, as well as if these proposed changes were approved for the additional height. So we believe this would allow for density to develop more from a vertical standpoint as well, where it's appropriate within the city. And it also makes changes to the setbacks and building height that would limit the height and increase setbacks when it's adjacent to single-family residence as a protective measure. So that's all I have to present. I'm happy to answer questions if you guys have any. So.
How many stories is 45 feet? Like 3, or could they do 4 if it's a flat roof?
Depends upon ceiling height, but I would say anywhere between 3 to 4, probably closer to 4.
Okay, I'm just curious about the history of how did we get to the point where it seems to be going up, and then how we got to the inconsistencies that this is addressing.
Right, that's a good question. It was one of the things that we looked up. I don't have a definitive answer on why it was established the way it was, but I know during the recode process, there was a residential district comparison table that generally outlined in the prior code what were the zoning districts that would be equivalent to in the new code. And so the RN4 was a new zoning district that was established in recode. The RN5, which is what we're talking about now, it was comprised of R2 and R4. And when you go back and look at R2 and R4, both of those districts had a cap of 35 feet on building heights. However, they did allow for permitted uses for multi-dwelling structures, which were apartments, in R2 and R4. So it wasn't that those were not envisioned for those districts, it was just capped at 35 feet. And then you went to RN6, which was the R3 equivalent from the old zoning code, and it had an unlimited building height.
Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, I had a question just about the setbacks. And maybe I'm not picturing where RN5 exists within the city, but I'm thinking about sort of conflicting desires to like activate street fronts and like provide engaged interfaces between buildings and streets with increased setbacks. And like if there are places in the city where there is RN5 zoning where a closer building front to a sidewalk could make sense, this feels like there's, I don't know, not the opportunity for that because you're just pushing it further and further back the higher the building goes. And just curious how you guys thought about that.
So a lot of the there is some RN5 located in Fort Sanders. A lot of those are lots that were traditionally platted as single-family residence or with single-family homes, duplexes, 50 feet wide by 145, 150 feet. They don't really support multifamily right now, given the nature of the lot area and width, that they don't meet the dimensional requirements. A lot of the other RN5 throughout the city is located off of arterials, major roads. And, I think the question would be as to whether or not, a lot of apartments that you see in and around the city outside of downtown Fort Sanders and around the central core, are they really designed and built to address the street from functionality standpoint, like you see in a more urban environment.
Very good. If there are no more questions, Ms. Hillman will address number 36.
Well, okay, so we're revisiting 7B25OA, the ordinance amendment to provide for a new single-family attached dwelling use in the zoning code. This case was remanded back to the Planning Commission by City Council to address an omission in the lot width dimensional standards. In RN5 and RN6 districts, the minimum lot width was written as 25 feet, and this has been corrected to 25 feet per dwelling unit for clarity. Staff took this opportunity to address other community concerns related to driveways, curb cuts, and the subdivision and infill development of narrower lots that may conflict with established RN1 and RN2 neighborhood patterns and character. I'll walk you through what has changed since you last approved this proposal. The original amendments attempted to address the concern of excess pavement and numerous curb cuts by explicitly permitting shared driveways for this use in the off-street parking standards of Article 11.3F. The shared driveway provision has been revised to what you see at the bottom. Sorry, it's not very big. This further incentivizes this approach and also clarifies it. So the main changes are that garage and carport requirements for a shared driveway were removed in order to reduce cost barriers to a shared driveway. The description of a shared driveway as being located down the party wall line was also removed to allow for scenarios where the driveway may be placed on one lot, providing access to both units from the rear or the side. It was clarified that the width of a shared driveway before it flares for parking can be as narrow as 10 feet wide per table 11.7. And this would reduce pavement and provide more area for landscaping. There was also concern that this use could permit the platting of narrower lots, which would then open the door for infill development of a different use, such as a single-family detached dwelling. So say you subdivided a lot for a single-family attached development and it never got built, or it burned down and someone wants to build a single-family detached home on these narrower lots. This ordinance amendment does not create non-conforming lots. The lots created with dimensions that only conform to the single-family attached use would only be permitted for that use. These lots would not meet the definition of a non-conforming lot of record. This concern is addressed in additional provisions to the principal use standards, which you see 2 additional bullets on the right-hand side there in the principal use standards that apply to duplexes and single-family attached. It states that lots created for the single-family attached use, which only conform to this use, are only permitted for this use. We go on to also clarify that if a duplex is converted to a single-family attached use, this can only occur if that duplex meets all the standards for single-family attached. So you can only subdivide an existing duplex if it meets all the standards for single-family attached. Another clarifying update was to state that the minimum interior side setback standards for this use, as well as townhouses, apply at the pre-subdivision stage, basically meaning that you're not applying a side setback to a party wall subdividing line. Lastly, we removed the illustration in the principal use standards. This representation of a duplex was likely illustrated to show how it can have an appearance that's similar to a single-family detached house. The only indicator in this image that it's a duplex is that there are 2 front doors. And while this image may be technically possible as both a duplex and a single-family attached development with a shared driveway on one lot, it's not representative of what is typical in either scenario, and so it was removed. So here are those substantive revisions summarized in blue. These updates clarify or further enforce the intent of the original ordinance amendment, and the basis for our recommendation of approval is unchanged. We recommend approval because this new use diversifies housing options and increases homeownership opportunity. It removes obstacles to homeownership because it allows each unit to have its own lot, so there's no need to set up a condominium regime to sell both units, which can be challenging to finance. It reestablishes a housing type that already existed in the city's code prior to the update in 2020. There was an attached house definition that applied to what we now call townhouses, and it included 2 units in its definition, whereas our current townhouse use is defined as 3 or more units. So this amendment addresses that gap. While staff are proposing that this single-family attached use be permitted in our single-family zones, it would go through special use review just like duplexes. So in RN1 and RN2, this use would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for its compatibility with surrounding development, and principal use design standards would be applied. Special use approval would be required before subdivision is approved, just like it already is with townhouses. This special use process would enable the enforcement of a shared driveway or driveways with reduced pavement via conditions of approval. This use also supports the purpose statement of the zoning code described in Article 1 to provide opportunities for a diversity of housing types. And for these reasons, we recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jesse, you said that you can't convert a duplex to a single-family attached unless it adheres to the single-family attached requirements, is that right?
Yes, if you were to try to subdivide it, it would have to, and that's clarified in the principal use standards now.
And is that the case most of the time, that that most of the duplexes that are constructed do adhere to those standards? And why was that put in there?
I can't speak to whether existing duplexes would, most of them would apply to single-family attached. Obviously, with single-family attached, sometimes you can have duplexes that are stacked, so that couldn't be subdivided down a party wall line. This came about with conversation with engineering about thinking through all scenarios and just making sure that we're closing any loopholes where you may see, existing duplexes trying to subdivide to allow for individual sale. And we would just want to make sure that if it's going to be redefined as this new use, that it would meet all the standards for that use.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder how many people, once this becomes available, will now see an opportunity to convert it to single-family attached, and would maybe give us more home ownership, which would be a desirable thing, but given this clause, that might not happen. So,
well, again, if they wanted to, this is kind of just clarifying what would already likely be required. If you're going to subdivide a duplex and call it a single-family attached dwelling, it would need to meet the standards of a single-family attached dwelling in that zone.
So you mentioned that subdivision isn't allowed unless the special use is approved, first of all. When, in the future, when somebody comes for a special use for a duplex in an RN1 zone, would it be typical that they would be presenting that plan as special use with the intention stated from the beginning that they're intending to subdivide that, and that would be part of the case file that we would be seeing? Or is this something that we're going to approve a special use and then 6 months later they'll decide to subdivide it? Because some of the curb cuts, a lot of the parking restrictions or changes that you have made are addressing the idea that if it's going to be owned by 2 people, there's going to be some differences in how we approach that than we would if it was just a stacked duplex that has a different kind of design. Is that fair to say that the intention to subdivide would perhaps, if not required, be substantially sort of communicated during that special use review?
So in RN1 and RN2, both the duplex and the proposed single-family attached use, they would both have to go through special use review. I would imagine if their intent is to subdivide, that they would just go ahead and apply as a single-family attached use. They certainly could apply as a duplex, but if they then go to subdivide later, those same single-family attached standards would have to be applied. It would have to comply in terms of how the driveway is designed, how it's laid out, and then it could be replatted in accordance. But some sort of special use review would have already occurred to ensure it's compatible with surrounding development.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. I'm thinking about from the stance of avoiding something being a condo and falling under the horizontal property regime or the, so can it, if you had a townhouse development that had 15 units all divided by, all on separate lots, that's completely separate from the new single-family attached, right?
Right. A single-family attached definition is 2 units, and townhouse is 3 or more.
Okay. So then everything else, everything else would have to be like yeah, okay, I got it, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hillman. If we could move on to number 39 as well.
So this is a rezoning request for a 1.38 acre parcel on Keck Road to go from agricultural to RN1. Staff recommended denial of this request back in June, and the Planning Commission recommended approval. It came before City Council in July, where they approved RN1 on the first reading, but on the second reading, they voted to remand the case back to Planning Commission for consideration of the EN zone, the established residential neighborhood zone, as an alternative to RN1. The applicant did not agree to revise their request to the EN district, so this rezoning package includes the original staff report along with a memo analyzing the merits of the EN zone at this location. The purpose statement for the EN zone describes how it is intended to accommodate Knoxville's older neighborhoods, which exhibit a uniform character and have a development pattern of complex, intricately designed homes on a highly connected street network. It emphasizes neighborhood compatibility, which is why it has historically been applied at a neighborhood scale and has not been considered for isolated properties. The EN district has design standards that are intended to promote the development of new homes that reflect the character of existing development within the district. Rezoning a single lot to EN runs counter to the zoning district's purpose because it applies design standards to one lot that do not apply to the rest of the neighborhood. If the design standards do not reflect the character of the surrounding neighborhood, applying those standards to one property could result in a departure from neighborhood cohesion rather than an enhancement of it. It's worth noting that several existing homes along Keck Road do not align with the EN standards, including requirements for transparency, garage location, building mass and shape, and street-facing elevations. The image on the top right provides an example of EN zoning that is consistent with the district's purpose. Here you can see how it applies to a whole neighborhood which is on a highly connected street network where existing development has been evaluated for alignment with the design standards. The image on the bottom right is the subject property, which would be an outlier of EN zoning on a neighborhood street lacking connectivity among several different zones. Existing residential development has not been formally vetted for compliance with the EN standards, though we do have cursory review indicating that several homes don't align. While the EN zone would limit residential intensity because it has a minimum lot size of 22,000 square feet, this is not a sufficient basis for approval of this zone at this location. For these reasons, staff discouraged consideration of EN, which again, the applicant did not request. They wanted RN1, and our staff report addressing that zone is unchanged since it last came before you. And to clarify, I believe the decision before the Planning Commission on Thursday would be to either, recommend approval of RN1 again, or approval of EN or any other zone that seems appropriate. Or denial, or, yeah.
So this was subject to a very lengthy conversation at the last council meeting, and the reason it was remanded to us, as I understand, based on watching the transcript, was that it was presented, although the applicant was not present, I think that should be said, but it was presented as though the applicant wanted EN and was told originally that EN wasn't going to work, and so they decided to go with RN1 on this parcel. And the only reason it's back before us is that council is under the impression that that was the solution to what we were looking for, which was lower residential intensity through the EN, and the entire reason it was before us was to actually review the EN, and now it's coming before us, and EN is not at play at all, and we're talking again about the exact thing that we've already heard under the same circumstances with RN1. Is that generally what is presented here?
Yes, I do recall having an early conversation with the applicant about EN and indicated that it was an inappropriate zone in this context. But when talking with the applicant about consideration of EN at this stage, he said that he did not desire it and did not want it to be considered here.
Okay, thanks.
Can I provide just a little bit of additional clarification? So as Ms. Hillman has already stated, you all can consider EN. Council has asked you all to do that. Our staff analysis is staying consistent that we don't think it's appropriate for this particular piece of property. But
And your recommendation as well on the RN1 is don't do RN1 and don't do RN. It should just remain as is.
Correct.
Or EN, sorry, RN1 and EN.
yeah.
Okay.
Can I guess maybe I need to go back and watch this, but why? I need to find out how to do that. But can you tell me why RN1 was not, I don't remember. I know this was only a few months ago, but why did y'all not want RN1? Why did staff not approve RN1 or deny it? Did it?
Primarily, we were looking at changing conditions to support more residential intensity and didn't find that there were changing conditions in this area that supported more residential intensity. The main concern was Keck Road being a very narrow, substandard street, and thinking about RN1, and the potential expansion of RN1 in the future, and this just being an area where the infrastructure didn't support more residential intensity at this time.
Could I ask for a primer on EN? Because we don't hear about it very often at all, and
I can tell you
Okay.
that back prior to Recode, I think we had a couple of neighborhoods who wanted to make sure that you didn't sell a lot and chop it up. I think there was a 3-acre standard there that you could protect the neighborhood. So we did it by lot widths, a minimum lot widths. I think, did it go to 100 feet or I think it was 100 feet wide in EN? So to maintain the bigger lots in established neighborhoods, this to me seems outlandish that we would ever consider EN on one parcel. I don't know that, would staff ever recommend to do one parcel in a neighborhood? The whole definition is established neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's to get the whole neighborhood to conform to the same standards. So I don't know why you would ask one lot to do it and none of the others.
Isn't in this case as well, just so we're sure, that the property in question is literally on the city line, right? We're very close to it in the sense that all of the zoning that we're looking at next to it isn't city zones. Those are all county zoning. So having them have to conform, there's not a zone that they would actually, like what's RA would be and they're not zoned RA either. Okay.
question. What is it zoned right now?
It's zoned agricultural.
Okay.
Very good. Interesting discussions to be had. If there's no more questions, we'll go on to number 14.
10H25RZ, this is a request to rezone a 1-acre parcel from agricultural to planned residential with a density of up to 7 dwelling units per acre. This property has double frontage on West Governor John Sevier Highway and Abner Cruz Road, which is a local residential street. Part of the subject property came before the Planning Commission last year for consideration of RB zoning, which was approved by this body but denied at County Commission. That case occurred before the comprehensive plan was adopted, Its land use classification at that time was medium-density residential, which permitted consideration of RB. The subject property's 1-acre lot size aligns with the general lot size of the properties immediately surrounding this parcel on Abner Cruz Road. Many of these properties have long-standing RB zoning, which permits densities of up to 12 dwelling units per acre by right, but RB's permitted intensity does not reflect the established single-family land use on Abner Cruz Road. Since 2022, 4 large properties within a 1/3 mile radius were rezoned to PR with densities ranging from 4 dwelling units per acre to 18 dwelling units per acre. Those lots were all considerably larger than the subject property, with the smallest one being almost 5 acres. The property's future land use is now the suburban residential place type, which does not permit consideration of RB, but does permit consideration of PR with densities up to 12 dwelling units per acre. Staff are recommending denial of PR up to 7 dwelling units per acre because this property is misaligned with the intent of the PR zone. PR is intended to encourage solutions to environmental design problems, and development is defined by a unified building and site development plan. This property has no apparent environmental issues. It's mostly cleared and there are no steep slopes, sinkholes, or streams. The small size of the parcel is also misaligned with that unified development vision, and its standard 35-foot periphery boundary limits buildable area on this 1-acre lot. Developing 7 units on this lot would also conflict with Policy 2 of the comprehensive plan to ensure that development is sensitive to existing community character, since the surrounding residential development is much less intense. If this rezoning is approved against staff recommendation, staff suggests adding a condition that a Type B landscape screen be installed along the southern border. This would align the property with the Governor John Sevier Highway Corridor Study, which recommends a landscape buffer along that arterial street. And it's consistent with other zoning conditions along this corridor. The buffer would look like the adjacent property to the east. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, we will move on to number 22. Looks like Ms. Hillman's been very busy this month.
10S25RZ, this is a request to rezone a 1.66 acre parcel on Brakebill Road south of Asheville Highway from RA low density residential with a condition that there be only one access point to Brakebill Road to RB general residential. The applicant does not object to the access condition, but did not specifically request that it be retained, so it would need to be reapplied if rezoned. And that condition was applied at the county commission stage. A couple months ago in August, the subject property was approved for a rezoning from agricultural to RA, and the applicant has reapplied for consideration of the more intensive RB zone. A neighboring property to the north was rezoned to planned residential with a density of up to 7 dwelling units per acre in 2022. A plan for an attached residential subdivision called Suncrest Estates was approved that same year, and it's under construction now. Abutting that property to the north is another small multifamily development called Suncrest Apartments, completed around 2007. Other tracts along Brakebill Road between Asheville Highway and Strawberry Plains Pike have been developed under the PR zone with densities ranging from 3 to 9 dwelling units an acre. However, the general area retains a rural character with farmland and forest comprising most of the land along this road. RB permits up to 12 dwelling units per acre by right, and it has an unlimited maximum building height for multifamily development. The subject property is bisected by a branch of Sinking Creek, so a 50-foot stream buffer would be required down the middle of this property. This significantly limits the functionality of the site for multifamily development. Staff are recommending denial of RB zoning here because it's too intensive considering the environmental constraints on the site. The most intensive development permissible by right in the RB zone would conflict with the Comprehensive Plan's Policy 2 to ensure that development is sensitive to existing community character. Because there is little buildable area on this lot, one would have to build up in order to get the density that's permissible by right, and this would dramatically be out of scale with what surrounds it. The East Knox County Community Plan was adopted in 2017 to preserve the rural character of this region and identify areas where more intensive development is appropriate. So RB zoning here would conflict with that plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did the applicant consider planned residential at all?
They wanted RB.
Okay, thank you. All right. Not seeing any more questions. Ms. Hillman's last one is number 18.
This is 10N25RZ. This is a request to rezone a 1.42 acre parcel from RB General Residential to OB Office Medical and Related Services. This property is located on South Gallagher View Road, just south of where it intersects with Gleason Drive, and there are multifamily developments surrounding the lot. The predominant land use around this intersection, as I said, is multifamily, which has been established for several decades. The subject property is surrounded by apartments, townhouses, a retirement community, and then further out there are single-family subdivisions. There is potential for a small commercial and office node at the intersection of Gleason Drive, where there currently exists a gas station and convenience store with neighborhood commercial zoning and OB zoning directly across the street from the subject property. In 2011, a major capital improvement was completed at this intersection to widen and straighten these streets, which added turn lanes and provided new sidewalks and signalized crosswalks. Staff are recommending approval of the OB zone here because it's compatible with surrounding development, which is evidenced by the fact that the first permitted use in OB is everything permitted in RB. It also provides a transition of land use towards that potential non-residential node that is at this intersection and benefits from roadway improvements, which increase safety and walkability. This case has been somewhat controversial, with comments expressing concern about traffic conflicts here because of the curve in the road. Engineering hasn't expressed specific concerns with OB zoning on a parcel of this size, but verification of site distance would be required as a condition for permitting and a certificate of occupancy. I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, seeing no questions, we're on to Jake at number 46.
Alrighty, so this is going to be case 10L25RZ, which is a request to go from the RN1 Single Family Residential Neighborhood District to the RN2 Single Family Residential Neighborhood District. It's at 3021 Shelbourne Road, which is over in the East City near the former Easttown Mall site. Zoning in the area is largely residential with commercial, office, and industrial mixed use clustered along Washington Pike at its intersection with Centerline Drive, closer up towards I-640 and the location of the Amazon shipping warehousing site. Residential development in the area is primarily single family with lots of RN1 zoning and some multifamily development that was developed under the previous PR zone prior to recode. That's indicated by all of the C designated area adjacent to the site. There was also a multifamily development completed recently in the CG2 zoning to the north of the subject parcel that is directly adjacent to that commercial node on Centerline Drive. Recommendation is to deny the RN2 district based on a lack of changing conditions in the area, as well as the requested rezoning being inconsistent with the scale of the neighborhood. While staff do not feel that RN2 would adversely affect the area, all conditions laid out by the code must be met for rezoning to be approved, and the subject lot was created as part of the second phase of the Pinehurst subdivision in 1955. Today, that subdivision remains largely intact and distinctly separate from the street network around it, which is comprised of minor arterials, Washington Pike, and, Millertown Pike, sorry about that. Recent development in the area has been concentrated along those more intensely trafficked roads, while this neighborhood has remained relatively unchanged since its prior subdivision and is distinct from surrounding development due to landscaping and some slight topography to the adjacent multifamily development.
I had a quick question. On page 7 in the case file that's online, if I'm seeing it correctly, it shows just 2 parcels up from the one that we're talking about as multifamily.
2 parcels up should not be multifamily. It's all single-family residential in that area. I can pull up page 7 real quick and double check on that for you.
Okay. Which that could, yeah.
You're looking at the existing land use map, it says multifamily.
Oh, yes, it's the existing land use map, and it's the second portion of page 7. It's just that one, so all the other images show RN1 there, and so I'm just questioning, what is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't have an additional address on it, because sometimes that's an indication that maybe it's a 2-family.
Like a duplex? So that could have gone through as a special use?
No, it doesn't have 2 addresses on it, is what
Oh,
I'm saying.
oh.
It does not.
And we can investigate that as a mapping area. When I went to the site, those were all still single-family homes. They're ranchers from being developed in the mid-50s.
Okay, just curious about that one anomaly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you look at the aerial, it does look like a single-family home, but it has a quite large driveway with a lot of cars in it. So I'm not sure what that means, but. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jake. We'll move on to number 21.
All right. This is a request to rezone a 6.36 acre parcel located at 2924 Bakertown Road from agricultural to planned residential with up to 4 dwelling units an acre. Zoning in the surrounding area has gradually transitioned from agricultural to RA low-density residential and planned residential ranging from 3.25 to 8 dwelling units an acre. Many of these rezonings, though, have occurred closer to Ballcamp Pike to the north and further south along Bakertown Road. The subject property is situated on a large curve on Bakertown Road with limited visibility and uneven pavement widths ranging from 16 to 18 feet. The suboptimal road conditions on this section of Bakertown Road do not support a substantial increase in intensity at this location. Staff recommendation is to approve the PR zone with up to 2 dwelling units an acre, as 2 dwelling units an acre would permit a minor increase in intensity that is better suited to the current infrastructure. Staff is also recommending one condition to maintain a 50-foot tree preservation buffer along the northern and western boundary lines, as the subject property is within the hillside protection area, and the recommended buffer would help maintain the slopes on the northern and western sides. This recommended condition is supported by the Comprehensive Plan's Implementation Policy 7 to encourage and development practices that conserve and connect natural features. After speaking with the applicant, they are agreeable to staff's recommended density and condition, but this case was still presented today because of community concerns related to infrastructure. Are there any questions?
Well, seeing no questions, we'll move on to item number 41. Kelsey, thank you.
Okay. This is a request to rezone a 17,389 square foot property located on the south side of Bill Williams Avenue, east of North Broadway, from office and infill housing overlay to CG2 general commercial and infill housing overlay. This request requires a plan amendment to the one-year plan and East City sector plan from traditional neighborhood residential to the EC3 Broadway Washington Pike I-640 mixed-use special district. The EC3 Broadway Mixed-Use Special District is intended to support development along the Broadway corridor and specifically recommends a mix of uses that are intended to support infill development along North Broadway. The special district recommends uses consistent with the general commercial land use classification, which is generally intended for development along arterial and collector streets, and recommends that commercial development be controlled to prevent traffic congestion and commercial encroachment into residential areas. The subject property does not front, nor does it directly abut North Broadway. It is accessed from Bill Williams Avenue, an unstriped local street that feeds into a residential neighborhood. An amendment to the Broadway Special District at this location would encroach into the residential land use class and create a disjointed section of the district that does not connect to North Broadway. The proposed rezoning would be an extension of the CG2 district from the west, but the subject property is not oriented towards the commercial development on the west side. The CG2 district here would permit more intensive commercial uses that draw more traffic to the local street and could conflict with neighboring development, which consists of less intense office uses near the entrance of a residential neighborhood. The proposed rezoning does not comply with the General Plan's Development Policy 10.10. Once transitional zoning patterns are in place, keep them intact. Do not compromise buffer zones by rezoning them to commercial. Development along Williams Avenue primarily consists of office uses, which are considered an appropriate transitional use between more intensive commercial development and residential areas. The CG2 district at this location would disrupt an established transition on land use intensity, and staff recommendation is to deny the CG2 zoning district. Staff also recommends denial of the EC3 Broadway Washington Pike to I-640 mixed-use special district because the plan amendment does not meet the intent of the district, which focuses on infill development along North Broadway. Are there any questions?
I do have a question on this. I'm somewhat familiar with this property. I looked at it years ago, and I seem to remember, at least at the time, they were marketing it, that it did have access to Broadway through an easement of some sort. Are you familiar with that at all? Is that
To my knowledge, there is not an easement for this particular property.
okay? Yeah, but I guess, do you know if it's the applicant? Because the applicant owns the lot next door too. I would assume they're trying to combine them. They own the one next door that is already zoned CG2, and then they're I'm assuming trying to gain the same zoning so they can do something on both the parcels. Is that, have they expressed any of that to you, or?
Yes, they do have an application to replat and combine the two properties, but that hasn't been approved yet.
Okay. Okay, good. We'll talk about it Thursday. Thank you.
Does that other property, the one that we were talking about, does that not have access to Broadway?
So
The one that I guess they want to replat?
So the property that the rezoning and plan amendment request is for does not have access to North Broadway, but the property next to it does have an access easement.
Right, I guess that's what I was getting at. That's what I recalled it. The lot that they own currently that's zoned CG2, I guess it's shown as Lot 1, does have some sort of easement that would allow them, if they choose to use it, I don't know if they're going to use it, and now they're requesting an application for Lot 5 to be rezoned. Now, I don't know if they're going to try to access it from Bill Williams Drive or North Broadway. but just a little background on it.
If I may, this is Michelle back here. I looked up the plat, and it looks like the ingress egress easement is only 12 feet wide, so it doesn't meet today's standards. If they wanted to use that, they'd have to do some sort of agreement with that owner to beef it up and take care of it that way. So we don't know where the access is going to be from this point.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have a question for Director Brooks. In terms of what the chairman has brought up, that there are these other components to the case that's actually in front of us, how are we supposed to consider that in our review on Thursday?
Well, I would encourage you all to think about the specific property before you and what's being requested. You can ask questions of the applicant to find out what their intent is, but there's no guarantee that they'll move forward with that particular development. So keep that in mind when you're making your final recommendation to council.
Very good. If there are no more questions, we'll go on to our final agenda item. Ms. Warner on item number 27.
So this is a concept and development plan for 50 single-family lots on 14.3 acres. This property is accessed from Hill Road, north of Cabbage Lane and Halls. The zoning on this property is planned residential up to 3.75 dwelling units an acre, with one condition: maintain a 30-foot non-disturbance buffer around the perimeter of the property, except along the Hill Road frontage. And this was placed by County Commission to preserve the existing trees on the site. So the 30-foot non-disturbance buffer is shown in red around the property. There's a comment about individual property owners clearing all the trees on their property, so the buffer should be within common area. So the blue area on the plan is the non-disturbance buffer shown on individual lots and not within common area. So largely, most of this buffer is in common area. It's just the blue is where it's not in common area. So there's condition number 6 for this one, is to keep this 30-foot non-disturbance buffer around the perimeter, except along Hill Road. Selective tree removal is permissible for invasive species or to alleviate the hazards of falling or dying trees. And the limit of disturbance will be verified with high visibility fencing. And this will also be noted on the plat. And then the green on the plan, that's the 150-foot TVA easement where no structures can be within the easement. So it does, along the rear of some of these lots, the easement is on their property, but no structures are allowed within that area. So most of this property is within the hillside protection area, and they're under the disturbance budget by about 2.5 acres. So the grading plan didn't show where the access for the stormwater pond would be, so there is a condition to not exceed the disturbance budget in order to ensure that. Are there any questions?
Well, very good. I think that concludes our meeting for today, unless anybody has any comments. Very good. Thank you so much. See you Thursday.